Well, yes, this emerged just yesterday, in actual fact, on Tuesday,
Mm.
which is that Iranian intelligence have, through means that are yet to be disclosed, obtained an enormous trove of Israeli documents and information, presumably out of a long-term, I would say, probably combination of hacking Israeli computer systems, but also significant human intelligence assets inside Israel itself. They've obtained a gigantic amount of information about the Israeli military and nuclear program, about Israeli intelligence and assassination operations inside Iran itself, and also the nuclear capabilities of Israel. And this is, of course, covered extensively on press TV, as you would expect. And what it also has done is shown that again, the aura of invincibility that the Zionist regime relied on for a long time to sort of ensure itself against attack has been punctured now to the point where the tire is very much flat, because it turns out that Iranian intelligence is infinitely more capable of doing damaging operations inside Israel. It's just that they were more patient about it, went about it over a longer period of time, and have now delivered a sample of the devastating information that they have found, which again relates to the Israeli nuclear program, but also apparently relates to Israeli-US operations inside Iran itself, and also points to the collaboration of the International Atomic Energy Agency with the Israelis and the US, and the allegation that has been made by people like Professor Morandi, who's a frequent spokesman, not an official spokesman for the Iranian government, but I think speaks with a good degree of knowledge about what is being discussed inside the Iranian government. Let's put it that way. And what he has said, and what others in Iran have said, is that the IAEA was actively passing information to the CIA and Mossad about Iranian nuclear scientists, and that this led directly to the assassination of many Iranian nuclear scientists who had gone in for interviews with the IAEA. And this, again, takes us back to a point which we have discussed before, which is how the US and Britain and the other Western powers have completely subordinated the UN and its agencies to their will. We discussed, when we did our Yugoslavia special, how the OSCE was essentially under the control of the CIA in its mission into Kosovo. The various different UN organizations that operate, including the IAEA, are dominated by Western-approved appointees. Something like, also, we must recall Scott Ritter's allegation that the UN Weapons Inspectorate team was replaced. Excuse me. Was stuffed with CIA and MI6 recruits when it went into Iraq under his leadership. So this has been known for a long time. What is devastating, though, I think, for the credibility of the IAEA, particularly because given that this agency has also been part of negotiations with the Russians over the things like the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, is that just how much this is just an appendage of the CIA and MI6, and it was being used as part of a hybrid war in Iran, and the Iranians know it. Which leads me to the concluding point of this my opening part of this story, which is that the negotiations between the US and the Iranians over the nuclear program are petering out, precisely because the Iranians, knowing all of this now, made an offer that they knew the US would have to reject, which is that they would suspend enrichment activity, or would limit it to a very small amount, just necessary for the maintenance of their civilian nuclear power facilities, if the US and Israel agreed to a nuclear-free region, which they know very well that the US and Israel are never going to be able to agree to that. So this deal, this negotiation process, is dead in the fucking water. But Kit, I'll throw to you for your analysis of these events and the Iranian operation against the US.
Yeah, well, I mean, the details are the full details are not yet in the public domain. And it strikes me that one way or another, the Islamic Republic has acquired so much information that they're still working out the full extent of what they've got at this stage. But yeah, that like it can there's a lot of rumor and conjecture about what these files contain. But yes, Press TV is steadily reporting on what these files apparently show. If and when they're broken open to the public, I think there could be some quite astonishing material in there. Now, I have something forthcoming for Grey Zone, but I'll delve into it now. The entire, I mean, in terms of infiltration of the IAEA, we have leaks at the Grey Zone which show that a kind of veteran MI6 dark arts specialist was tasked in, I think it might have been in 2006, with trying to, and bear in mind that this is an MI6 officer who is implicated in the extraordinary rendition program, i.e., was directly involved in the capture and torture of terrorist suspects. So, how he may well have used such tactics to rustle up false information. He was tasked by MI6 with identifying evidence of Iran's nuclear program. And lobbying international organizations such as the IAEA, the OPCW, as we know from the OPCW leaks on Duma, heavily compromised and infiltrated, supposedly objective international organization, and building, trying to get other countries on board with sanctioning Iran over its nuclear program. It must be stated that in 2007, there was a U.S. national intelligence estimate that was published that expressed high confidence that Iran had no nuclear ambitions and did not have a nuclear weapons program. And apparently, not only did this assessment remain unchanged for several years, but Mossad agreed that they didn't actually, contrary to Benjamin Netanyahu's annual declarations that Iran was mere years away from becoming a nuclear armed. The entire notion that Iran was seeking nuclear weapons may well be the result of an MI6 black propaganda psyop. Now, the Iranians have very wisely undertaken measures to prevent their nuclear sites from attack. Like Israel can't pull off what it did to Iraq, I believe, in the 1980s. Their nuclear sites are buried deep inside mountains. They can withstand, major Richter scale earthquakes. Even the US's most powerful bunker busters would be completely unable to scratch their nuclear facilities. So, I mean, it's the Iranians understand that they hold the cards here. There's nothing that the US can or Israel can do to stop them doing this. They understand that the consequences for trying to stop them are going to be absolutely catastrophic. For the US and Israel, as we've discussed, there was I believe it was July 2024 report from a Zionist lobby organization, which stated that, such as the US's basing structure in West Asia, it would take Iran 5 minutes to wipe out most of the US's bases and the jets parked there, in the event that they're attacked by the US or Israel, or if they're just attacked by Israel, because they would see that as the US being complicit in it, one way or another, and quite reasonably. So, they are the ones ones who are in a position to dictate terms in negotiations. And I think that what's particularly interesting about the toing and froing over the nuclear deal is you got to bear in mind that before Trump even took office, the narrative in the media was that he was going to give Netanyahu a blank check, that the US was going to step up hostile military operations against Israel's adversaries across West Asia. Trump not only seems to be trying to distance himself from Netanyahu in the manner of European leaders, but like he seems to be in a hurry to try and get some kind of deal sorted. Like he's like desperate to get a deal done in Gaza. He's desperate to get a deal done in Ukraine, and he's desperate to get a deal done in with Iran. But the fact of the matter is as we so often say, to quote Mao, the empire is a paper tiger. It has no clothes at this point. There's nothing. Just to finish, there is nothing that they can do, let alone say, which is going to threaten China or Russia or Iran into folding and acquiescing to their demands.
Yes. Well, they have been found out, which is that this late period empire that they've been running since the early 1990s depended entirely upon nobody ever shooting back.
Yes,
in a serious way. As soon as somebody did, it was all over. And this is now a lesson that's being learned by everybody, and that they can't do anything to Iran. Yeah, they could bomb Iran, but as you have correctly pointed out, the Iranians have the capability to destroy the U.S. military presence all the way across West Asia. If Israel does it, then they have the capability to destroy a large amount of Israel, including Israel's nuclear facilities, which would be a complete disaster. So the U.S. are absolutely stuck. The only thing that they can do is double down on color revolution stuff, sabotage, terrorism, that kind of thing, which they've tried over and over and over again, and it hasn't worked. So this is what it looks like when the empire gets stuck, which is why Trump was begging the Russians to intercede with the Iranians for him, which, of course, the Russians will say, that's very nice, Mr. President. We'll ring Iran, and nothing will happen. The Russian-provided air defense systems, that this is what has been argued, that flipped the script somewhat, and enabled them to lock on the Iranians to lock on to the Israeli fighter jets and risk to the point where it was guaranteed that they would be shot down by the Iranian Russian-supplied air defense systems, which meant that Netanyahu, for all his bellicose bullshitting, turned the jets around and ran home again because he didn't want to face the disaster of losing a large amount of Air Force assets in the skies above Iran. Yeah. Now they're stuck. They don't know what to do. And they have no clear way forward now. And no one's going to give them a spade to dig themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in.
Yeah, precisely. And I think as well that, like, I mean, to bring things kind of like full circle, you mentioned color revolutions. There was the mighty Sopiko Japaridze, who is this wonderful Georgian communist. We hope to get her on the show at some stage. She runs an amazing podcast called Reimagining Soviet Georgia. It's obviously not as good as Decline and Fall, but it's still very good. Nothing is, and she's also an excellent writer. But the point is that she posted, and this kind of passed me by. There was a EU barometer poll of Georgians, which found that support for the EU had fallen from 66%, I believe it was in May last year, to under 50%. Right. And that is a direct result of the numerous attempted color revolutions and the punishment of the Georgian Dream government for passing the foreign agent law. I wrote at the time that all of these bellicose actions were going to undo the 3.5 decades that the US and the EU had invested enormous time, energy, and money trying to turn Georgia against Russia and trying to turn it into a perfect client state. Okay. And we are seeing this happen. And funnily enough, Iran is a very clear example of it. I mean, the West is the West's problem is that it is so hated and distrusted in the very countries it's seeking to destabilize now. that overt Western support actually usually ends up damaging the opposition, which is a opposition element sponsored by the West, which is why the NED websites largely got the National Endowment for Democracy websites largely gone black, and they don't state who they're funding and why, because it's the kiss of death now. And the whole purpose of the NED was to do publicly what the CIA did privately, and openness was meant to be its own protection. Now, we saw something similar in Iran towards the end of 2022, where there was Mahsa Amini, who was a Iranian woman who passed away in uncertain circumstances. This triggered sizable protests. The second that Iranian exiles, including supporters of the Shah, based in the US, started promoting these protests and cheering them and saying, that they could lead to the fall of the government in Iran. The protests stopped. Because they were just like, we want absolutely nothing to do with you. Leave us alone. So it's like, yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting kind of late stage empire period we're living through. And again, in the spirit of these things, collapses happen gradually then rapidly. We are into the rapidly space now.